The relationship between faith and wealth is commonplace in the teachings of Jesus. Our earthly possessions are not disconnected from our beliefs, and often the way we handle our assets shows what lies beneath the surface. We also have to think of our efforts, our time, our patience, and our thoughtfulness as assets in this context. The Bible often encourages us to hold money, assets, and wealth lightly, so that they don't get between us and God. Indeed, they don't affect the relationship in any way. Such as the impact of possessions on daily life, not only can they affect our relationships with God, they can impact on the way we interact and treat others, in relationships, in families, in groups, and in communities. If our money becomes the only priority in our lives, it pushes God aside, and it pushes aside the compassion and caring we should naturally have as Christian disciples towards those whose worries about material things, food, clothes and shelter, are not discomforts or annoyances, but fundamental needs. You don't need me to tell you that there are millions in our country who regularly go hungry, and many more millions across the world who live all their lives in poverty. But this is not about shaming or guilt-tripping. It's about flagging up all the opportunities that exist for us to be generous. In my life, I've met hundreds of people who are mind-numbingly selfish. But at the same time, I am aware of thousands, millions of people who are naturally generous. People for whom smiles, kind words, some encouragement and a helping hand are a way of life. Without seeking to blow my own trumpet, I was once sitting on a bus. It was an evening, and a young man stepped on at a stop with a pram carrying a toddler and a slightly older child at his side. He asked the driver how much it was to a location which I knew was at the top of a hill. Probably quite a difficult journey for this little party. The driver told him, and his head dropped. He began to leave the bus, and without thinking I called out, "How much do you need?" He needed 50p to get home. To me it was change in my pocket. To him it was relief from the prospect of a hard climb with 2 small children, at a time when he was obviously in some distress, particularly financially. He was so grateful. I'm sure we all have stories of how simple acts of kindness, easily done, often have a massive effect on those to whom we are generous. Being generous, according to Timothy, is not only good for the community, but also for the well-being of the giver. Generosity ensures money is not a distraction, but a symbol of God's love in the world. Generosity shows that our time, our talents, our gifts, our resources, our influences are what we should be using in this world as disciples of Jesus. It's a calling to share our spare with others. So to recap, we all know we should do what we can to make other people's lives better. But the thrust of this campaign is to encourage us to think a little more about that calling and how we express ourselves in our Christian lives to the service of God. Here are a couple of videos with other examples of generosity and the outcomes of those acts.